Hello, Simon Chilambo here. Happy New Year to one and all. People ask me and they want to know what happens to me when it comes to my writing of my blog or especially books. Where does it all start? Is it that I get an idea and the drive to write on a spur of the moment, or what happens? Well, one might say that the inspiration, the actual inspiration that now, Simon Chilambo, you must write. You might say that that happens on a spur of the moment. But that's because something has happened to awaken or it's relatable to stuff that's been going on in my head for a long time, long time, for many years actually so far. So when I, for example, write or even speak about xenophobia in South Africa, is because this subject has been in my head from the time I became aware of my reality. I was 4.5 years old when on my first day at school things happened, and that made me to understand. In fact, I heard that I was not a Mosotho, I was not South African, because my father came from lands far, far away. And since then, I've noticed, I noticed that I was being treated differently. People were, you had two extremes. On the one extreme, people were very kind to me, but there were many who were not very kind. And it was also very clear that they discriminated me because I was child or son of a foreigner. When I write, let me say that also at that time, the time I became aware of my reality. In fact, it was Christmas Eve. Now I know it was Christmas Eve, 1965, and Christmas Eve itself was very dramatic, and but in a positive way, although it was scary, but I wouldn't say that it traumatized me in the sense that lots of that drama brought the idea of God, and ancestral spirits, at the same time in my life. So my spirituality, I could trace it, to it start to Christmas Eve, 1965. But the joy of Christmas I actually experienced on the morning of Boxing Day, 1965. That's when it's like Father Christmas, everything about Christmas, just wow, and people say that I'm happy all the time. I don't know about that, but I'm inclined to think that that experience of first this drama of God and ancestral spirits on Christmas Eve, and then the pure joy of Boxing Day, it started it all, And I know of someone very close to me whose own first recollection of awareness of their reality was a very traumatic experience. And that trauma, this person has carried, all his life to this day. So, and this is why, for me, it's always been so important, that when I meet children for the first time, I very consciously seek to create a positive impression, make a child happy from the word go. Because I know from my own experience that, my inclination towards joy, happiness, positive thinking, having fun, that is connected to my first awareness of my reality. And that age, 4.5, 5, and subsequent years, it was a great time to be me. I also like to think that my creativity also, comes from about that time, to the extent that in my book, Matrona Emigrant, the mountain scenery and the scenes that take place, around the mountains, to a very large extent, are inspired by my first impressions, of seeing mountains, in Lesotho, and things that I used to hear happened, in the mountains. Some of these, I've experienced. I've been in the mountains. I've seen from a distance. So it's been a very, very important part of my life. And then my last blog essay is about suicide. But this comes at a time when there's been 3 incidents of suicide during the course of December 2019. One starting the beginning of the month, starting with a child, a son of people that I consider friends, although we haven't met personally, but we've met through Facebook. We've got very good interaction, especially the mother, and they lost their child to suicide. And then my maternal cousin, youngest cousin in South Africa, also committed suicide 1 week before Christmas. And then Christmas, Norway's now we know now beloved Ari Ben committed suicide on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Day itself, 2019. So then this ignited or just inspired this drive to express my thoughts now, finally. Although suicide appears in stuff that I've written so far, but as part of developments, in certain stories, but not on its own, as it appears in the latest blog entry. One of my friends who's read at least one of my books says, man, in your stories, abantu bafa nje. In your stories, people just die. And indeed they do. But that's because these stories inspired my reality of having been born and raised in South Africa. And I grew up with death all around me, both murder and suicide itself. And I was born during the apartheid years. I was born in 1960, and I now know intellectually that oppressive regimes historically, all over the world, thrive on violence. Violence is an integral part, of sustaining oppression. So oppressors will directly kill their opponents and at the same time create conditions for their opponents, the oppressed, to kill themselves. That's how it is. That's the reality I grew up in South Africa. So in 1968, Easter time, suicide came home, so to say, home to me. The man I was staying with in Lesotho, who was living with my grandmother, attempted suicide, and this is after he had threatened to kill me and had come very close to killing my grandmother. I guess if he had managed to kill my grandmother, it would have been fine with him. But that action made life very difficult for him, and he was going to get killed, by other people around. I won't go into details. But I think that realization that he was going to die made him come to the conclusion that he might as well kill himself. But what he did was he went to a hardware shop, we're told afterwards, bought the equipment that he was going to use to effect suicide, and went around the village, telling everybody, that such and such a time he was going to kill himself. And I remember that early evening, he coming home. There were several other children in this house, and he said he had come to say goodbye to us, and something he had never done before. And he said that we were not going to see him anymore. We were children, we didn't know anything. He went into his house. In Lesotho, had a tradition where you have one house for children, one house for the adults, the parents, if you want to say, just standing, facing each other directly. And a short while after this man, came to say goodbye to us, and somebody else comes running to our house and says, "Children, where is your father?" We say, "No." Well, the older children told him, what had just happened. And this older guy runs, to the man's house, and we had him smash the door breaking the door, and we came to understand that, it was just in time that the guy who wanted to commit suicide made his move, but that saved his life. His uncle came and saved him there, but he was in a coma. He fell into a coma. Maybe a day or two later, when he woke up from his coma at hospital, he repeated the threat. He said the threat to my grandmother that he was going to, when he gets up from hospital, he was going to kill my grandmother and me, and other children. That's how we left Lesotho. And so suicide has been a concern, of mine, and also great fascination since I was 8 years old. I have also linked suicide to depression. You from it's such a depression, and then depression gets so extreme, and people lose it all and decide to end their own lives. In this book here, Machona Awakening, Home in Grey Matter, I address my experiences in South Africa between 2013 and 18, when I went there to recover from my own depression. I had thought that I would need maybe a year at the most, but it became 5 years. And one of the things that helped me to come out of that situation was writing. Finally wrote books. And I wrote about depression in connection with living in the diaspora. If you can see the title there. This was a special article to write. Depression in the diaspora. It's over now. It took me 3 days to work with it. From April the 5th to the 8th in 2015. In the next posting, I will read select passages from here. And the book is available on Amazon. Just search Simon Chilembo. Or if you go on chilembowarriormoves.com, there's a page for about my books. If you're in Norway, you can order the books from me directly. Okay, until next time then. Thank you for watching.